we'll try to catch up time. And our next panel, I would invite our moderator, Leif Larson. And I will have to make short description on about the speakers and also invite speakers. This is the Kely Tain, this is Thadeus, Ben Evans, and Steve Moore. Please join the discussion. We won't gonna make any breaks. Just not to lose time. We will have networking time a bit later after the panels. So I will introduce Larson. He's political strategist and film production specialist. He has developed strategy and advertising for political candidates and issue campaigns across the country. His past clients include key politicians from the Republican Party like Patrick McHenry, current chair of the House Financial Service Committee in the Congress, and John McCarthy. Sorry if I wrong with the name. Correct me. Please correct me.
Members of Congress.
Former United States Secretary of the Army. And so I also want to introduce speakers, or
well, I was going to ask if, usually people that know themselves faster people up here. So if you want to start, Danny.
Well, good afternoon. My name is Thadeus.
Where should I sit? Thank you. Oh, there's okay. Thank you.
We'll let you sit anywhere you want.
Yeah, from you can. And do the screen. I know that I can do it.
And we also have one more speaker who joined us last moment. So I will ask you when it will be a proper moment.
My name is Thadeus. I am a political consultant and organizer.
Try to use microphone.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
No.
My name is Thaddeus Walls. I am a political consultant and organizer. I work with advocacy groups and first-time candidates around field fundraising and various items. And most recently, was helping clients with Philadelphia's most recent municipal cycle.
That is doing very good.
Hello, my name is Kely Tain. I'm a political consultant. I work all over the United States. I specialize, I guess, in swing districts. I do a lot of work in North Carolina and Pennsylvania. I've worked on every single type of election except for presidential.
Hi, my name is Ben Evans. I work professionally at GW, George Washington University, as a recruiter for the Graduate School of Political Management, but I'm kind of coming to this panel as a student in that program that I'm also a recruiter for. So I have been taking classes for the last 2 years and will be graduating this May. And I just found out that Kely is also an alum from that program, so I'm in good company up here. However, I do definitely consider myself a little bit of a novice compared to some of the other experts here on the field. So I'm just happy to be a part of this, and thanks.
All that means is you haven't lost any races to do that.
Hey, I'm Stephen Moore. I am, I've been around the block a couple of times. I've done political work in about a dozen different countries. And I was a chief of staff to a member of House leadership for a while and was heavily involved in the Republican wave with the NRCC in 2010. And currently, I called Kyiv home. And I went to Ukraine on day 5 of the war and started an NGO that has gotten about a couple of $1 million worth of humanitarian aid to the front. It's done a lot of work helping out the Ukrainian military. They, despite what you might hear, they're not very well funded, so they need body armor, helmets, kind of all the basic stuff. We help them with that. And what I found lately that is most important that I can do to help Ukraine and keep World War III from breaking out earlier is to communicate with my former colleagues on Capitol Hill. So I'm trying to get fact-based, data-driven information. You know, I've been to the front like 12 times, so I'm trying to get that information to policymakers in DC and to opinion leaders around America.
Great. And I guess for our Skype person who is on with us, can you introduce yourself?
No, we lost him already.
Oh,
Just he's from Poland, it's already night while we were singing.
there we go. Well, I just also, for our people that are on Zoom listening, who maybe are not that familiar with American politics, I'm just gonna take a shot in the dark here and kind of label some of our panelists here. That is use the interesting word, political consultant and organizer. I would say you're probably a Democrat.
Yes.
Yes. There we are. Just for organizer is a key word to you can pick up as you go here and there on American politics. And it's Kely, I'm sorry. Kely, I'm guessing is probably more of a conservative Republican on our panel here today?
Yes.
Okay, we also have the academic who is in a world of their own. So we the only person that's up here that's probably legitimate is Steve. He's doing some, God's work over in Ukraine. So, thank you for him. Well, let's get started. The first question that I have here is, and we'll open it up to, we'll go with Stephen on the end down there, and then we'll work our way down towards me again. In your opinion, what are the challenges in the upcoming election cycle in the United States?
Wow, where do I start? I don't want to take up the entire panel. So here's what we've got. We've got two candidates, both of whom nobody in America wants to run again. If you look at the polling, both of them don't have a majority of people thinking they should run again. They're both actually about in the 20s and 30s. And nobody who's running for president is right side up on the favorables. So except for Nikki Haley is 35. Everybody has higher negatives than they have positives. So that's a really interesting environment to be in. And so the heater issues are going to be Ukraine, Israel. Foreign policy is going to make a real difference in this election. It's interesting. We did some polling. My NGO, the Ukraine Freedom Project, did some polling of Republican primary voters. And we looked to see if people would support the economic aspect of aid to Ukraine, aid to Israel, that, we are creating manufacturing jobs. Nobody cares. So, the inflation is a huge problem. Jobs are still there. And so, until that becomes a reality, people, so the economy is actually, despite inflation, that's going to be the problem. That's going to be, but it's not jobs. So the interesting thing I see is that Nikki Haley has more money than DeSantis, and she's on her way up, and DeSantis is on his way down. So she's got something like 11 million bucks she can use in the primary. He only has like 5. So I think that Nikki Haley will become the opposition to Trump. Who is going to be the last person standing against Trump? I think it's Nikki Haley. And I think she's got a good shot. So what I like from, she is campaigning on being aggressive against Russia and Hamas, and it's working. So that's what I like.
Great. And Ben, same question to you. What do you see as the major hurdles in this upcoming election cycle in the United States?
If we are gearing up for a showdown that we saw in 2020, I think it's going to be really difficult to give reasons, especially young people, reasons to actually get out and go to the polls. Obviously, there was a huge turnout in 2020, and that was a very unique year with the pandemic and mail-in ballots and things like that. But I don't know if people will be as enthusiastic about going out and supporting and turning out in the same way. What I do find interesting is the other ballot initiatives or other issues that tend to be on the ballot in local elections that seem to be giving districts more turnout. For example, since we've seen the overturning of Roe v. Wade, we've had a number of different states who are now taking action to legally keep abortion access legal. And we also, I think, just saw this last week, Ohio recently legalized the recreational use of marijuana. I think that some of these other issues are gonna maybe be more exciting for younger voters. And I think that that's important to pay attention to, especially if the presidential election is just gonna be another rerun, I guess.
Okay, and Kelly, your position on this upcoming election cycle?
So I think it's gonna be very interesting, obviously, but I also think, because we are so polarized, how do you get the information out? How do you sway voters? Because, we want to get as much voter turnout as possible. Well, if we don't have a lot of enthusiasm because we are dealing with a repeat of Biden and Trump, how do you actually, make the voting population enthusiastic about this election cycle? And also with Trump, how is Trump going to affect, if he is the nominee, how is he going to affect the election turnout? How is he going to affect the down ballot? And how is he going to affect different voting blocks, like with unaffiliated women, Republican women? I think that those are going to be some challenges. And if by some, circumstance he is not, and let's say Nikki Haley is, how is that going to affect, people who came into like the Republican Party under Trump? Are they going to still engage, or are they going to go away? So I think that's some of the things that are going to be challenging. I also think our messaging on abortion is going to be critical, since the Dobbs decision, from my side, it has not gone well. And I think we have a messaging problem that needs to be addressed. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out, and how we address, inflation and with border control, and what's going on in Ukraine, in Israel, and how those voting blocks are going to, vote. So I think those are some of the challenges.
Thadeus?
Some challenges, for example, like the Biden administration has to take from policy speed to translating to everyday Americans how this administration not only has helped the country, but also, are you better off and do you still want stability? And all too often, there's what can be delivered, and then the show that is Congress. So a lot of people don't care for the compromises or the intricacies of governing. And then, of course, in America, even though we have two major parties, most people don't identify with either or. Democrats need a crisis, Republicans have to care about something. And plus, not only with foreign policy going on, but also with every re-election, you always have these articles always either doubting or trying to find something to have an issue with the administration, like, oh my God, polling this, or they're not going to get elected that. But we'll see the closer we get into 24. And now we have progressives potentially getting primaried by APAC funding. So right now, everyone has to pick what hill they're willing to die on and what they'll be willing to compromise on. Easier said than done.
How do you think that goes? What do you think? Who wins, APAC or the progressives?
Money talks, and we all know it walks.
All right.
Well, thank you for all your opinions. You're all wrong. We could probably live up to that because, everyone up here has made observations in the past, I'm sure, that they would not like to repeat after the elections and the primaries came. We'll move on real quick. And again, we'll keep our timing down as was on this. What methods do you believe will be the most effective in the upcoming election in the United States? In your opinion, which method and messaging are most effective in both the Democratic and the Republican Party? And Thadeus, where do you see in amongst the Democratic Party, what tool out there, what method of campaigning is the most effective?
As someone who started their career in field, of course, I'm always going to say door-to-door conversations, but also having people to validate and carry different campaign messages. It's a different ballgame, a commercial delivering a message versus someone you trust someone you know. And then also that's one of the other reasons why there's been more investment in year-round organizing, because a lot of the feedback that's been coming to campaigns in different groups, to the point where both sides really aren't going to take no one for granted. Like, I really expect a lot of Republicans to make more inroads with non-white voters, only because of how people are vilifying a lot of culture issues.
Great, I'd like to also probably comment on that is, a lot of times we in the United States, as opposed to people in other countries, a large part of campaigning here is done through imagery, whether it's direct mail, whether it's social media, and also whether it's, the big spends that come on TV. And, we often see a doctor talking about abortion. We'll see somebody who was a victim of a crime talking about, the need for law and order. So in those cases, you're trying to throw a bigger net to put forward a face that people can identify with. I recognize the hurt that person is going through. My next door neighbor lost somebody to a violent crime, or I believe the same way the doctor does. This is an issue that should be between a patient, a woman, and her doctor. So, there's those big things, but I do agree on this part, and this is my editorialization. I take into account the moderator. So I do think, door-to-door knocking, being out there, being seen is a great way to do it. But when you've got 150,000 doors to knock on, it's a little bit difficult, but you need people out there doing it. Kely, what would you say is the most influential tool out there?
So I think for down ballot races, I definitely think like canvassing, door knocking, because that's the best way to get your message out. But I think also with presidential, gubernatorial, the most that I've seen, I think social media ads really gain a lot of people's attention. I think that is, because everyone's on their phone or maybe texting to get your message. I think it's the quickest way and the most effective way in this 2-second time frame that we have to grab people's attention. So.
I'll just get on that again, so I'll just keep the conversation going. I'll throw this to Ben on this part. You mentioned social media. I just recently wrote an article and a lot of people here regarding the Russian position. My article was, is social media the rope that we're selling the communists and the Russians, in which we will hang our own democracy? And from that position, we've seen a lot of basically attacks on our democracy from Russia, from China, from Iran, in the way of false social media, which has given rise to what I classify as the angry voter, and built up they and they're against us. That's the enemy, which we point to somebody of a different party, a different philosophy. So Ben, I'll throw this to you. Is social media still reliable in the upcoming elections? And is it something that you can use to sell an opposition on, go with me, I have the better ideas, or is it now solely basically ginning up, as we say, your base?
I mean, I think that social media is imperative no matter what, but I do think that it presents many challenges. I'm in a crisis management class right now, and we're talking about the use of social media. It's impossible in a crisis to respond to every single voice that has an opinion on what's going on. But I think far too often we allow these reverberation chambers to just reinforce people's ideas, and sometimes half-truths, mistruths. But social media is an incredibly useful platform to speak directly to your constituents and your supporters. And by doing that and engaging in that on social media, you actually help them feel valuable to your campaign, which I think is one of the ways that one of the really effective strategies you can grow your campaign. Just to kind of get back to your original question, though, I wanted to mention that I think that Americans are getting far too tired of the amount of apocalyptic literature that they're hearing in campaign emails and calls and ads. I know that it's easier to be against someone than for something, and it's easier to stoke fear than it is hope. But we need more candidates who are willing to kind of go to the mat for hope. I don't know. We need something to believe in instead of just the other side's bad.
but that goes to all those emails I get from Kely, like, about, the end of the world coming unless I send her $25. Stephen,
I have data that says the end of the world.
Oh, there is kind of
I live in a war zone, man.
you, you and I, we've exchanged, discussions on, over on social media. And so I'd like to,
I haven't seen you in years, but I see a lot of social media.
Exactly. The idea now is, we've also presented, we have the echo chamber and people are presenting what they consider to be true facts and everything else. Can you give us a little example? How can you use social media to push back against the false narrative?
Oh, yeah, great question. It's something I deal with every day because, what I'm doing is I'm trying to push back on a lot of the false narratives that are created about Ukraine. So Zelensky is banning the Christian faith from Ukraine, right? Does everyone agree with that? Yeah, okay. It's not true. It's quite the opposite true. The Russians are persecuting Protestant Christians at a great rate. Zelensky is canceling the elections. Not true. He is, it is in their constitution that during a time of war, they can't have elections. It predates Zelensky. So how do I get past that? What I've been doing is I've been pinpointing my communication and targeting people with the truth who, I don't have the money to change the opinions of the 10 million people that tune in to Tucker Carlson when he comes on Twitter. What I do have is I have the relationships on Capitol Hill and the relationships with opinion leaders where I can go and give them the truth in digestible pieces. Now, in terms of social media, if you haven't received a connection request from me on LinkedIn yet, you will. And so I find that very valuable. LinkedIn is working for me, and I get a lot of people who are disproportionately educated, disproportionately politically active, who listen to my stuff. And so I've started taking LinkedIn very seriously. I have not made Twitter work for me. Instagram works, but it has a limited audience, and because it's visual, I really like that on Instagram. The other thing that I found is I have a minute 15-second video of children from a small village in Ukraine who talk about being shelled by the Russians and tanks and their grandparents covered in blood and all this sort of thing. And I sit here and I show it to people, and it's on my Instagram, but I show it to people and they only have a 45-second attention span. So after 45 seconds of these kids telling these heart-rending, horrible stories, the people that I talk to start talking to me, And so I find that fascinating. I don't think you can do anything, 45 seconds is a lot of time these days.
And I'm going to go off script here a little bit, and I'm going to throw some questions at their consulting panel up here. You just mentioned 45 seconds is an eternity. In politics, it is. Usually right now, you have 15 seconds to 30 seconds, whether you're doing what we call a pre-roll ad on YouTube. Generally, those are 15 seconds. Kids see them all the time because they're watching Mr. Beast or something like that on YouTube, and these things come on. Thaddeus, 30 seconds. What do you think is the issue, and how would you explain it to people that is going to turn the election for your particular party or candidate? 30 seconds.
The economy.
There we are. And Kely.
I would say the economy also.
Oh, look at that. Okay, well, I'm going to come back to you, Ted. If it's the economy, what about the economy? And you got 20 seconds this time.
It's so stupid, it has to make sense to the average person.
You're good, Kely? You got 20 seconds.
Okay, ask yourself if you were better off during Biden or during Trump.
In Los Angeles, these two just spent about $3.5 million for their candy. Ben, you got 30 seconds. Give me your take.
Yeah, I think that the biggest issue at the top of people's minds is public safety. I think that there's a real big rise in violence in communities happening. Obviously, police are kind of getting targeted now. It's really scary, and so doing something that's going to calm people's fears is probably what they need right now.
Steve, if you had 30 seconds to do an explanation video on issues, anything, either, on the need for supporting, I'll throw it to you, the need for supporting the Ukrainian fight. How do you do in 30 seconds?
America has a lot of problems, but if we don't fight the Russians in Ukraine, and if we right now we have people who are willing to fight and die for their freedom and for world stability, and all they want is the weapons. And so we are spending about 5% of the annual budget of the U.S. Department of Defense on weapons for Ukraine, and we've degraded Vladimir Putin's warfighting capability by half. This is the best money that has been spent on defense in the history of Russia being our adversary, and not one U.S. soldier has had to die. And if we stop doing that, the problems over there are going to become our problems over here. So we need to do this now.
And that's why we don't do it for the second.
What did I do? How did I do?
You did 35.
Okay.
There, but we also need a disclaimer out.
So I think, can I amp it up?
Yeah, the Joe is using paper about it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, we'll go back, and there was Thaddeus, I think you were the one who said, money talks. In American politics, for anybody who is on our Zoom and isn't familiar with it, we have on federal races, those for representing a United States member of Congress, U.S. Senator, President of the United States, we have federal limits on how much each of those people can take from each citizen. We also have what we call political action committees, which some of these have unlimited amount of money they can take and don't have to disclose where they got it from. So what we're looking at here is we usually have people that have 2 stacks of money. Now the PAC can't tell candidate A what they're doing with their money, wink, wink. But if you look at what they're doing with it on the campaign side, you can figure out the strategy they're using and how to use your money best to. Now the PAC can't tell candidate A what they're doing with their money, wink, wink. But if you look at what they're doing with it on the campaign side, you can figure out the strategy they're using and how to use your money best to. So what we're looking at here is we have several presidential races and candidates who are running money that they're getting in for the primaries. And they also have, though, multi-million-dollar PACs that have taken in money from people who've written a $2 million check, a $3 million check. Somebody wanted to do. How will PACs affect this?
Hypothetically speaking, in my opinion, should Trump become the Republican nominee, I am of the belief the progressive floodgates will reopen. Because I think people were putting their points to the side just in case. So a lot of things that didn't or couldn't get funded during the midterm cycle, the coins will be found, but also the uncoordinated coordination allows different entities to take advantage of certain communications that the candidate's campaign won't say these things, but the PAC or the independent expenditure, oh, definitely, they'll take better, harder, maybe nastier swings, maybe deeper dives, but it depends on how not only like the dark money people, but also the groups themselves, because each group just has different pockets of candidates or groups where the understanding is if you do what's for X, Y, Z, we'll give you whatever with the assumption of what you will support down the line.
And I'll just throw in, on the issues, and you went over this a little bit, but I just shellacking the 3 races in Virginia, primarily because the Democrats did a great job of what I call political jujitsu. They flipped the fight that Youngkin had won and had to get himself elected back in 2021, which was the angry parent who pushed him into office by being angry about COVID lockdowns and what was going on in school. The Democrats came back and said, if you want to see angry voters, we'll get angry voters turned out using the abortion issue and the ban that is being by the governor. So what issue do you think will be used out there if you say it's Trump? What issue, or will it be just basically Trump?
I think it really it'll depend on the state. I know definitely in Pennsylvania, abortion, help Josh Shapiro get elected and really wipe the field. So really, wherever that's probably a sizable female population, it's probably most people best bets to not say nothing too crazy, but that's using too much logic in politics.
Kely, I've given you, just written you a check for $65 million. What are you going to run as your national campaign with that money? What is the issue you're going to push?
The economy.
And what about the economy? Besides, are you better off than you were 4 years ago?
Well, that, inflation, is on the rise. People still can't afford to buy the basic needs. Gas is skyrocketing, where under previous administration, it was $1.98 a gallon. People who are making $100,000 a year are living paycheck to paycheck. So if they're living paycheck to paycheck, what are the rest of us doing? That we don't have the path to living the American dream anymore. It's gone. And we need to rebuild that. And the best way to rebuild that is with the Republican candidate, whether it's Trump, Nikki Haley, or whoever. That's our best bet, because no one can afford to live in this economy anymore. Can't save money. You can't, splurge on Christmas or Hanukkah. You're living literally paycheck to paycheck.
And I'm gonna throw, before we go to you, I'm gonna throw out there, like I said, I just had 3 candidates took a shellacking in Virginia. And we took a shellacking in places where we had folks who owned houses, which were over, an average house cost in Great Falls, Virginia is about $3.5 million. Taxes, property taxes have increased over the last 10 years, 30%. They did not turn out to vote on the economy. Is that because they have so much money? I'll tell you what people did turn out to vote on was the abortion issue. So can your economic issue trump a social issue? And I Trump as in the card play, not the candidate. Can it overcome the anger issue that's behind something like abortion?
I think it can. I think because abortion is definitely like a hot issue, and I think that a lot of social issues are, but I think everyone can understand what it's like to check their bank account. Hey, do I have enough money to do this? Or when you're budgeting, like, hey, do I have, am I going to make my budget, or am I going to have to scale back? Can I send my son or daughter to that, the sports camp or anything like that? But I also think that if I think one of the most effective, if you can play both of them, feed off of them, like social issues are important, but there's also they're intertwined, and that abortion is a hot topic, and whether you think that women should have the right to choose beyond 15 weeks or not, that's an important issue, but can she afford the abortion, or things like that? You can play those
There's the old adage of people vote first by their pocketbook,
yeah,
and then by social issues.
Yeah.
We'll just have to see where that falls out over the next couple months and where we fall. Ben, 65 million sitting in your bank account as a political action. What are you going to do with it?
So, man,
And I'm gonna throw this curve at you. What are you gonna do with it issue-wise? And how are you gonna use it on what form of medium? Is it gonna be TV, radio, mail, digital, or any of mix of the above?
okay, this is a lot. All right, let's see if I actually did my homework. So yeah, I think I would focus, since I said public safety with my last answer, I would probably focus on public safety issues, obviously depending on the district. But I think I would probably take the angle of trying to help address some of the underlying economic issues as a way to solve some of the issues with public safety, such as more affordable housing, the cost of healthcare, inflation, obviously. And in terms of just the specific mediums, ways to get it out there, obviously social media, you have to, I feel, nowadays. TV probably, and direct mail. Actually, a lot of new data coming out about direct mail. Millennials do like to get mail, and they open it and they respond to it. So can still be effective.
There we go. Stephen, to you, but I'm only giving you $60 million. So your
right.
pack, I know but you're used to coming with doing more with less.
I'm the oldest student in the panel, so I get the experience to make it work. So, so I think you guys are all much nicer people than I am. Because here's what I would do, is that there's a belief among the electorate that Biden is not fit to lead. And it's because of his age. And so, whether or not that's true, I would hammer that I would just like beat the living heck out of that. I would run TV commercials with every Biden gaffe that he's ever committed. And just pound it into people that the world is unstable. 99% of the Republican primary voters in my poll that I did think the world's an unstable place. And so I think that carries over to swing voters as well. And in this time of instability, President Biden does not have the capacity to lead. And again, this is we can argue about whether that's true, but it seems to be present in the polls right now, and I would just beat the heck out of that.
I can visualize your TV spot. Things are bad. We show Biden.
Yeah.
Do we need somebody who is solid or can we afford somebody and then show the next he's tripping over the sandbag?
Yeah.
So I see your TV.
The commercial. Yeah.
$60 million.
Yeah, man. The commercials write themselves.
So I'm gonna
Leif, I'm
close.
sorry, I gotta step out.
Yeah, I was
but
gonna say, well, go ahead. I was gonna follow it up. I'm gonna take 3 quick questions. These have to be quick. One for each of our 3, since you gotta step out. We'll start with Ben. Anybody have a question? Yes.
I have a question, and
Yes.
it actually happens to be to Ben. I think he's the only one who stated how he'd allocate the 65 million. So would you define the targeting? I know you had mentioned millennials, for direct mail, but you're gonna have to refine your audience for that spend. Can you come up with how to do that quickly?
Probably not, but I can try. Yeah.
I do it all day, by the way, so.
Yeah, so obviously, now I feel like I just need to think about it a little bit and I can actually give you an answer.
Well, that is the correct answer. I'll wait for the data to come in on the polling, and then we're gonna figure out who's who on the demographics. But if you had polling, quick, what would you use? Would you use social media for what age group, mail for what group, and TV targeting what demographic, men, women, whoever you think?
Yeah, so TV probably for older. Cable, I think, is more of a luxury of not my generation. Direct mail, probably social media, absolutely for Gen Z and millennials, but probably just focusing on maybe a sweet spot between 18 and 35 for mail.
You slap on, we in the TV media buying industry, which is huge for politics out here for our people on Zoom. We have what's called fringe prime. It's that time just before the evening news. It's also called buying the Wheel and Jeopardy, because that's where the old folks are watching. Sorry.
It's also where a lot of cheap ads come from.
Well, I don't know. You buy the Wheel.
Cheaper ads.
Yeah,
Cheaper
it's
ads.
not like 60 minutes, but it still costs a little bit of money. Okay, another question. Yes.
I wanted to ask Kely, you said that Republicans have like a messaging issue when it comes to abortion. How would you respond to that?
Well, I think from my experience after the Dobbs decision, we ran from it, and the opposition defined us that, hey, they're going to put moms and women in jail. And that, we don't care, about a woman's right to choose, and it's private. And I would say that's not true. I don't think you know, we're not gonna put, women in jail for having an abortion. We're not going, you know, to demonize them for that. We are trying to protect life at a reasonable stage of pregnancy, because we believe in the right to life. But from my experience, when it comes to issues like this, we have a tendency to get completely after thoughts came out from the races that I work up. I mean, my clients were being yelled at, they froze, they didn't know what to say, so they just didn't want to handle the situation. So I would say that, you know, you have to reach that, you have to hit that head on and say, this is what we believe in, you know. You can't, it's not, and I would also turn it to partial birth abortion and abortion up to, you know, the time that you're giving birth, because those are the ones that I think whether side you're on, people are like, I don't know about that. So.
Thank you.
I do think it's the new third rail. We used to have in this country, reforming Social Security, which is still a topic most people don't want to cover in their elections, is a tough one. But I think the abortion issue was quickly closing in on that as being the third rail. That should stay away from. Last question, anybody? On anything for Thaddeus, anything? Oh, go ahead, Ian.
I wanted to know more about like how you would segment the money. And you said that like abortion would do really well with like female, you know, like largely female districts. What are the other issues that you think would like play well in other areas in the country?
A combination of, first and foremost, I'd spend X amount of money on TikTok with 1835 code, whatever the highest rated show among women is. I would just beat the drum with all women issues on that front, but really a combination of blended local politics with unfinished like federal business for the most part. But this is assuming people are willing to have the conversation about bread and butter checkbook issues instead of, oh my God, I hate this. Oh my God, I hate that. So really tangible conversations without the buzzwords and culture wars.
Thank you.
TikTok, really? Peter just told us a few minutes ago, TikTok's owned by the Chinese government. You're gonna be selling off all these people's information to them.
The goal is to win, but to at least run it through how this can work efficiently. I was thinking that at first, I'm thinking somehow, some way TikTok just has a certain demographic and a chokehold. I can't explain it. I've never seen nothing like it.
The band's political.
Probably the truth. Just want to close off and thank our panel up here. If everybody could give them a great big hand. With the idea that for our people who are overseas and have seen political, you know, elections here, I'm going to give a little bit of a gloom and doom aspect of it. I think we're going to see just a continued rise of the angry voter, which is churned on and urged on by the angry politician. We have a lot of those. We see them there. I call them the Kardashian Congress members. Matt Getz and a few other people. I criticize them mostly because they're members of my own party. But we also have the squad, and they're whatever I can say that's going to get me on TV and anger people is what I'm going to say. So I think we're going to see that big in this upcoming election. Sadly, I think it's going to happen regardless if it's Trump. I think regardless if it is Biden, who kind of strangely, I guess, made the comment today that he thought Newsom could be president of the United States. I don't know if that was a smart comment with the way that things are going for him, but you know, I think either way, we're going to see another round of the angry voter. And it comes down to the people in this room, people that are professionals, to try to keep things on the straight and narrow. Because one thing I learned from a mentor who got me into this business early is you never lie. Your client's reputation is on the line, as is yours. Always tell the truth. And I think everybody up here and in this room believes the same thing. So thank you for taking the time out and be with us today.